There's a strange mystery about the grave of Lee Harvey Oswald, and it's about the marker next to it. Let's learn all about it on a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True. Welcome to The Internet Says It's True, where every week we learn something that sounds made up but is really true, part of the WCBE podcast experience and available on all podcast platforms, also the NPR app and the NPR website. My name is Michael Kent. This is episode 227. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've got a brand new story for you this week. And thanks for hanging in there the last couple of weeks as we played a couple rewind episodes. If you're a regular listener, you already know that I'm sort of balancing this podcast with a pretty busy schedule, touring and performing, and so sometimes I just can't get a new episode out. But we've got one this week. Also, stay tuned for Matt Donnelly later in the episode. That's going to be a lot of fun. If you find value in this show and you want to support me, I'd be very grateful. I got to say, the Patreon has been stagnant for a few weeks in terms of new signups, and those Patreon members supporting me is basically what pays for the expenses to keep this show going. So please consider signing up at patreon.com/Michael Kent. When you do that, you get access to all kinds of goodies like Joke Story Trick. There are something like 60 episodes of Joke Story Trick on there, and Patreon is the only place you're able to access those. Also, I post every episode ad-free on there. I send out stickers and other stuff. Once again, it's patreon.com/Michael Kent. And if you join at the $10 level, you get a producer credit at the end of every episode. Also, we've got awesome t-shirts and mugs for sale. Those are at theinternetsaysitstrue.com. Just click merch. If you do that and you're a Tizitor, you get a discount on all the merch. So let's get into this week's story and talk about the gravesite of one of the world's most notorious names, Lee Harvey Oswald. It was an unseasonably warm day in November when Ray Carney showed up at Rose Hill Cemetery in Fort Worth. His floral company had been hired to deliver flowers to the gravesite of Lee Harvey Oswald, exactly 4 years and 1 day after he had been charged with killing the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. On that Thursday, he delivered the flowers in a card from an anonymous sender that simply read, quote, "You will never be forgotten." But when he found Oswald's plot, the headstone was missing. This headstone had been engraved with Oswald's full name, birth date, death date, and a floral border with a large cross in the middle. It was the kind that sits in the ground, not that sits up. But now it was missing. So Carney reported this to the cemetery superintendent, Earl Johnson, who placed a small, temporary marker in its place. In the meantime, newspapers came to report on the theft of the notable marker. And while they were there, another bunch of flowers was delivered with a card that read, quote, "As these flowers hold sweet scent, this grave does hold me innocent, I am. No other voices speak that louder grow, no longer weak. Who, if legal means do fail, will some names true killers tell." The poem was signed C.D.E. Jr., but again, no one has ever identified the identity of the sender. 3 years later, Marguerite Oswald, Lee's mother, replaced the headstone with a much more discreet version, simply reading Oswald, in the hopes that maybe it wouldn't attract as much attention. She was the one that purchased the plot for her son and planted a large weeping willow tree next to it. Lee Harvey Oswald is the man who was blamed for the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Of course, since the assassination on November 22, 1963, and continuing today, there are all sorts of theories on whether or not Oswald fired the fatal shot, or if there was conspiracy involving possible other assassins. And this podcast isn't about that. It certainly isn't about that because a lot of that may change here now that some of these files are finally being revealed. This podcast is about Oswald's grave in Fort Worth. Lee Harvey Oswald was born in New Orleans. His father died shortly before he was born, and when Lee was 5, his mother moved the family to Fort Worth, Texas. His mother moved the family around a lot, requiring Lee to attend multiple different schools around that area. His difficult childhood landed him in juvenile detention by the age of 12, and this continued into adulthood. He had tried living with his half-brother in New York, but that didn't work out because he tried to stab him. And they moved around a ton: Texas, New York, New Orleans, and eventually, his brother co-signed for him to join the Marine Corps at the age of 17. The reports on Oswald's military service are kind of confusing. On one hand, he scored very high on his shooting test, sort of teetering on the levels of sharpshooter and marksman, but on the other hand, he shot himself at the arm at one point, fought with the sergeant about it, and was court-martialed, demoted, and imprisoned multiple times. While some of his fellow Marines described him as a, quote, very competent crew chief, end quote, he continued to face punishment for insubordination and was referred to as Oswaldkovich by some fellow service members because of his affinity for the Soviet Union and its causes. Not only that, they report that overnight he just started speaking Russian. Now, that wasn't really the truth. He had been studying it and wasn't very good at it. But to them, they're like, who is this guy? Is he a Soviet spy? The truth was, he was just infatuated with all things Soviet Union. He left the Marines on a hardship discharge because he told the Marine Corps that he needed to be home to take care of his aging mother. So there's a lot of weird stuff that happened after this, and I'm trying to pull myself back from talking about all of it because, again, this podcast isn't about that. But here are just like a few bullet points. 1959, Oswald defected to Russia. Then he tried to kill himself in a Russian bathtub. He unofficially renounced his U.S. citizenship. He fell in love with a woman from Belarus, proposed to her. She said no. In 1961, he starts to rethink his defection, and he marries a Russian woman, and then they apply to return to the U.S. They do that in 1962. And this whole time, by the way, the CIA has been keeping an eye, and they have a file on Oswald. So then we get to 1963. He actually attempted an assassination in April of 63, and this was a new piece of information for me. I had never heard about this. It all came out from the Warren Commission, which was the group that investigated the JFK assassination. Oswald had sent away for this Mannlicher Carcano rifle through the mail, and he used it to try to shoot U.S. Major General Edwin Walker, who was an anti-communist segregationist, kind of a nasty guy, but that's beside the point. None of this was tied to Oswald until after his death, and they sort of put the pieces together that it was him that fired the shot that actually missed and just caused some shrapnel wounds in the Major General's arm. But it was that same rifle that he mailed away for that was found on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building after the JFK assassination. But in between April and November, Oswald had moved back to New Orleans, where he was notably seen handing out flyers for the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. This was a pro-Castro, anti-U.S. government activist group that supported socialist causes and was outspoken against the failed Bay of Pigs invasion. Now, some have claimed that he was only part of this group as a spy to infiltrate the organization, and there's no real evidence of that, but who knows what we'll learn in the future as more and more of these files are released. Between New Orleans and the Kennedy assassination, he traveled to Mexico City, with apparent plans to then go to Cuba and eventually back to the Soviet Union. He was denied a visa and ended up returning to Dallas in October. The official published Warren Commission conclusion was that Lee Harvey Oswald, and only Lee Harvey Oswald, was the person responsible for that fateful day on November 22nd, 1963. And this is where my podcast is going to do something that I bet every other podcast about Lee Harvey Oswald won't do. I'm skipping past the thing he's known best for. We're not going to talk about the JFK assassination. So let's skip forward to November 24, 2 days after that shooting. Lee Harvey Oswald was being escorted through the Dallas police headquarters to the county jail, and it was just before noon, and the basement was filled with press, so the whole thing was caught on camera. There was even a crowd outside the police station.
Madness and hate erupt anew in Dallas as President Kennedy's accused assassin is shot down himself during a jail transfer. There's an ominous symbol in Lee Harvey Oswald's murder weapon as he is taken to the city jail basement where an armored car is to move him to a maximum security cell. Oswald walks his last mile. His assailant moves in from the right.
There is Lee Oswald. He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot.
Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub owner, stepped forward out of the crowd of reporters in the basement and pressed forward a small .38 Colt Cobra revolver toward Oswald and fired a shot into his abdomen. It injured several organs and major arteries. He was taken to the Parkland Memorial Hospital, the same hospital where the president had died, and at 1:07 p.m., almost exactly 2 days after Kennedy, Oswald died. His last recorded words were, "I want to see the American Civil Liberties Union." Lee Harvey Oswald was buried at Rose Hill Cemetery in Fort Worth. Before finding a burial space there, multiple other cemeteries had refused to accept his burial. The public obviously hated Oswald, so much so that he had no friends to be his pallbearers. The local press carried his casket. Most of the public blamed Oswald alone for killing the president. In those early days, there wasn't the massive speculation and doubt that exists today. The Warren Commission didn't release their report until 2 years later, which caused more doubt about the official story when people read what came to be known as the magic bullet theory. So it was interesting that there would be the occasional flowers and messages of support laid at Oswald's grave. Like most graves of famous or infamous people, it was frequently visited whether people supported him or not. And after that gravestone near the northwest corner of the cemetery was stolen 4 years later, Oswald's elderly mother replaced it with one she thought would garner less attention. It read, Oswald. But from here on out, we're changing stories. This isn't about Oswald's gravestone. It's about a strange and mysterious gravestone that appeared immediately to the right 30 years later. In 1997, visitors to the Lee Harvey Oswald burial site saw a strange name next to it. The grave marker said nothing more than the name Nick Beef. Nick Beef. Who the hell is Nick Beef? For the next 16 years, no one knew. We know now, and after a quick break, so will you. If you love listening to this podcast every week and you want to show your support, that would mean a great deal to me. You can do that by becoming a Patreon member. We've got members at all levels, whether you want to pledge $1 a month or $10 a month. Just think about the value that you receive from this show. And if you like the histories and the stories that you learn about or the jokes that you hear, and if you think that they're worth it, consider signing up. For that, you get every episode ad-free and a week early, access to bonuses like the unedited videos of the guest appearances, and 20% off all merchandise. You can sign up today at patreon.com/Michael Kent. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent.
Hey, I'm Cliff Bumgardner.
And I'm Harrison Stewart.
If you're like us, you probably grew up watching the Discovery Channel classic, Mythbusters.
From rocket cars to chicken cannons, Mythbusters proved there's no question too big, too small, or too ridiculous to put to the test.
Now we're going back to rewatch the show from episode 1, and we want you to follow along. Join us as we revisit every single myth, moment, experiment, and explosion from throughout the show's legendary 14 seasons. Subscribe now so you don't miss one.
I'm John DeSando, host of Back Talk. This podcast is an extension of the long-running, award-winning movie review show, It's Movie Time. Back Talk features additional content and banter with guests about new movies. If you want more insight and information about what's playing now in theaters and online, find Back Talk at the WCBE Podcast Experience on WCBE.org. You'll be happy you did.
There was a time that humans used 100% organic products as healing balms and moisturizers for their skin. Well, I've partnered with an awesome company that wants to get back to those times. Fatco sells organic and responsibly made tallow-based skincare products. For centuries, humans used tallow in skin moisturizers and healing balms, but unfortunately, the topical application of these fats seemed to stop around the same time that animal fats stopped being considered part of a healthy diet. A lot of modern skincare products do more harm than good by stripping your skin of its natural oils. Let's change that. You can try them out now at fatco.com and get 15% off your order by using my promo code INTERNET. Go to theinternetsaysitstrue.com/deals for the link. Lee Harvey Oswald's mother purchased a newer, less descript grave marker for her son, and when she passed in 1981, she was buried in a grave nearby. But in 1997, a gravestone showed up to the immediate right of Lee's. It said, Nick Beef. For years, people wondered who this person was. History buffs or curious locals would visit the grave and wonder if Nick Beef was part of the story or perhaps a distant relative. This Houston Chronicle newspaper article from 2005 brings up the mystery with the headline, Mysterious Headstone Beside Lee Harvey Oswald Grave Puzzles Kennedy History Buffs. The article displayed a photo of the grave site and mentioned something that only made things more interesting. The grave was empty. The manager of the cemetery, Debbie Alexander, said nobody is on file for that plot, but a burial has not been done there. One theory that people spread was that the cemetery would refuse to give directions to Oswald's grave, so a couple local reporters bought the plot next to it so people could ask for the name Nick Beef in order to find the Oswald burial plot. But that wasn't the truth, just a rumor. One of America's most debated and controversial events now had another, albeit small, element of mystery. But in 2013, 16 years after the stone was placed, Nick Beef, finally came forward. It was coming up on the 50th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination, and the man who owns the Nick Beef grave marker decided it had been long enough and it was time to tell the truth. And the truth is, Nick Beef isn't anyone. It's a pseudonym made up by a man named Patrick Abedin, a man who considers himself a comedian and performance artist, which is funny because he doesn't perform and he's never done stand-up comedy. He told his story to NBC News. He said when he was a child, his parents had brought him to see the president when John F. Kennedy visited Texas in 1963. He was there on November 21st, cheering in the crowd at the airport to greet John and Jackie Kennedy when they landed at Carswell Air Force Base before continuing on to Dallas the next day. He recalled sitting on the shoulders of a nearby military police officer so he could get a glimpse at the president and first lady as they went by. The next day at school, he told his classmates about how he got to see the president in person. And that day, it was announced over the school loudspeaker that President Kennedy had been shot. Like many people, Abedin remembers exactly where he was when he heard the news, but for him, it was a little bit more personal. As he grew older in Texas, he and his mother would drive to the Carswell base, and as part of their ritual, they would stop at the Rose Hill Cemetery on their way home and visit the grave of Oswald. His mother said to him, "Never forget that you got to see Kennedy the night before he died." And when he was 18, there was a newspaper article talking about how the grave beside Oswald stood empty because nobody wanted to be buried next to one of history's most famous assassins. Without so much as a thought, he drove to the cemetery and put down $17.50 with a promise of a further $10 payment for the next 16 months. That was 1975. And the plot that he purchased stayed empty for the next 22 years. In that time, he had moved to New York and dabbled in comedy, at first as a player in an improv troupe and later as an occasional humor writing, using his pseudonym of Nick Beef. Why Nick Beef? So it was just an inside joke between Patrick and his friend from years earlier. They had gone into a restaurant and his buddy had jokingly referred to himself as Hash Brown, so Patrick played along and said, "I'll be Nick Beef," and it became a running joke between them and sort of an alter ego for Abedin. In 1996, Abedin's mother died, and he returned to Texas to help conduct her funeral. During that trip, he visited his plot on a pilgrimage to visit Oswald's grave like he and his mother had done so many times in the past, and this time, he decided he would place his own marker there. He bought a stone that almost perfectly matched the size of Oswald's, and when they asked him what he wanted on it, all he told him was Nick Beef. For a lot of people, putting your name, even a fake name, next to a notorious killer would seem morbid, but for Abedin, it was a way to remember that day and the special bond he had with his family and his mother. Maybe he knew that the general public would find that morbid, so maybe that's why he chose to put his fake name there. He doesn't plan on being interred there, he wants to be cremated. The plot isn't for a body, it's for his memory. It was his way of commemorating a formative memory of his life, and that's pretty morbid. But Patrick Abedin, who is still alive and living in New York, a non-performing performance artist, readily admits he's sort of a morbid guy.
And so, why did you decide to buy the plot?
Well, we moved away about 5 weeks later to Abilene. By the time we came back 4 years later, the world had just totally changed. Men weren't wearing suits, no gloves. The Beatles had made Sgt. Pepper. And my mother and I used to go look at the cemetery. It's a very interesting cemetery, even without Oswald. And she would say, "Never forget that you saw Kennedy the night before he died." And I would just look at this grave and just think of the juxtaposition of all this. Like, how could one man really change history that much?
Why choose to reveal your identity now, after decades of secrecy?
Well, I kind of let the conspiracists have their fun. I didn't acknowledge anything. I didn't do interviews. I didn't put my real name on there because by this point I had children. I didn't want my last name, Abedin, my kids growing up going, "Why are you next to an assassin?" I'd written under Nick Beef since like 1977. It wasn't a name I make on the spot. And it sat there for 20 years with nothing on it. My mother died in 96. I went down there and before I got on a plane to New York said, "Put a marker on that thing." That's when the fun began.
So there you have it. Another mystery solved. The internet says it's true. It's time for Yap Yap with me and a friend. Today I'm calling the Mind Noodler, Matt Donnelly. He's been on the show a few times before. I love this guy. I first met Matt in his role as the head writer for the TV show Penn and Teller Fool Us. He's now touring the country with his Mind Noodler show. He starred in Foolers Live. He spent years opening for Piff the Magic Dragon. And if you're in the Red Bank, New Jersey area, you can catch him on the Jokers of Magic on March 16th. Matt Donnelly, what's going on, man? Good to see you again.
Not too much. Thank you for the shout out. I appreciate the research. Yeah, we're Jokers of Magic. First 2 weeks of March. We're doing 5 cities. Doing Bloomington, Indiana, Sugarloaf, New York, Concord, New Hampshire, Elkton, Maryland, and Red Bank, New Jersey. It's a little test run. If it goes well, there will be more.
Yeah. And you're on that show with a couple other people who are on this show. Nick DeFott, Eric Diddleman, both on this show quite often. And who's the fourth character in the
Mike Mills. Mike Mills, who was a good comedy magician, but a better tour manager. So he retired and was a successful Mills Entertainment. Tours fantastic acts all over the country. He's secretly been out of retirement for the last 2 years, getting his magic act back together. And so now we're putting it to the test, and we're putting him in his own Jokers of Magic tour. He's part of our crew. And
he's got to go up against like 3 heavy hitter comedy magicians. This is going to be your comedy entertainers.
I just saw Nick in Mad Apple, and then I was like, gulp.
So good.
I really got to keep up with him.
He's
gonna be
really,
hard.
really funny guy. Just naturally funny.
Yes.
Well, so we've been doing a new thing on the podcast where I ask guests to give me a fact that they think maybe I haven't heard about, instead of me just starting out with some random fact. Can you tell me a true fact you think there's little chance I've heard before?
Oh, let me think. Sorry, because I think you texted me joke or fact, so all I came up with is joke.
Okay, well, maybe there's a joke I haven't heard before, but do you know any random facts?
Let's just pools are incredibly expensive to put into Las Vegas, and most Las Vegas houses don't have basements, and most people don't know why.
Really? Wait. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's something about first of all, didn't know that, so that's a winning answer. But
yeah.
So it's something about the ground, I assume.
Yes.
But there's other desert cities with pools, right?
I think so, but we have what's called caliche, or like a calcified rock. And for some reason, in the basin, the way Nevada has evolved in the basin of this bowl, like Las Vegas in the middle of this bowl, so somehow we have a very dense calcified rock that it takes dynamite to break apart. And so when people want a pool or basement, it takes basically like high-level explosives to make it happen.
So you just told me that nobody knows, but then you've solved the mystery in the next sentence with caliche. Either
that was my version of trying to look really smart.
I was going to say either A, you're underselling or overselling the nobody knows thing, or B, you're solving this mystery as we speak, and you're going to be incredibly wealthy.
Well, in my defense, I find dynamite to be a solution to many problems. So.
Okay, fair. No, that's pretty crazy. I did not know that. I never even really put it together. I have been to a friend's house in Vegas with a pool, so now I know. But that friend is incredibly rich. I guess that makes sense now. Anyway,
yeah.
For the first question, we're gonna play for a joke. So if you get it wrong, you got to tell me a joke. If you get it right, I will tell you a joke. Here's your question. The burial plot next to Lee Harvey Oswald's grave is a joke. It's literally a stone purchased by a performance artist who will never be buried there. What is written on this gravestone? This is just to the right of Lee Harvey Oswald's gravestone. Which one of these things is written? A, he didn't do it. B, John F. Kennedy. Or C, Nick Beef.
Okay, all those are funny. John F. Kennedy's very funny, but really dark. And it was such a tragedy that I'm trying to lean against. My sense is to not go with B. I'm not sure if I understand C, but I bet C has an explanation that would make a lot of sense. So I'm going with C.
The answer is C, Nick Beef. Yes, it is the one that doesn't make sense. It literally was, it's a pseudonym for, this guy calls himself a non-performing performance artist.
Okay.
He's just an eccentric man who lives in New York. He did some comedy writing under the name Nick Beef once upon a time. I don't know what he does now, but and when he was a kid, he saw Kennedy the day before. So November 21st, he was at the Air Force Base where Kennedy first landed before they went to Dallas, and got to see Kennedy the day before. And so it's just like a formative memory. And he grew up living near this grave, and his mother and him would visit it all the time as a memory of this, historic day that they witnessed, basically.
Yeah.
He came up with this weird nickname, Nick Beef, along the years. And so he didn't want to put his real name on this plot, but he bought the plot for like $17.50. And this grave showed up in 1997. They put the grave there. And then it wasn't until just maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that he stepped forward and said, "Yep, that's me. I'm Nick Beef. Here's why I did it." Really crazy. It's a weird
that
little
is
piece
crazy.
of history.
I'm also surprised that Lee Harvey Oswald just has a proper grave somewhere.
Well, his first stone had more info, like birth and death date and his full name, and it was stolen. And then his mother was still alive at the time, and she purchased a second gravestone, less descript, just as Oswald. So it's and so for years, when people were trying to speculate as to who the heck is Nick Beef, the story was, well, the cemetery won't tell you where Oswald's buried, because they didn't want that negative, whatever, like the traffic. So the rumor was that some reporters got together and made this fake grave so people could go in and ask for this fictitious name, and then they could find Oswald's grave. But that wasn't true. It literally was just on the wishes of this one guy who wanted to sort of commemorate these times with his mother, and this time in his life. A little bit morbid, but crazy.
But not a lot of bit morbid. Just a little bit morbid. Just proper a little bit amount of morbid.
Yeah. If it was, I'm wondering if it was if it was like Cuba / mafia.
Yeah.
I did this whole podcast without talking about the assassination a whole lot, because I didn't want it to be about that. And I'm currently reading a 900-page Tom Hartman book about the plot. And probably a lot of stuff in that book is either going to be confirmed or disproven here very soon when the rest of the files come out. But all right, I owe you a joke. So tell me a number between 1 and 500.
428.
Let's see what we got, and if it's racist, I'll skip it because this is an antiquated joke book. This is actually a good joke. Is it wrong to have sex before you're married? Only if it makes you late for the ceremony. It's a pretty good joke. That's not
a good joke.
Here's a Lily Tomlin joke. I worry about kids today. Because of the sexual revolution, they're going to grow up and never know what dirty means. I don't know if I get that one.
That's a little... That feels like a topic starter. That feels like the beginner of a Tide 5.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one more joke, and then you get to guess which comedian. This is from a famous comedian.
Oh, fun. Okay.
When I was growing up, all my friends... I really want to do this in the comedian's voice. When I was growing up, all my friends wanted to have sex with anything that moved. Why limit yourself, I told them.
That sounds like Gilbert.
No, okay. It could be a Gilbert joke if it was delivered as Gilbert. Oh man, okay. It's an Emo Phillips joke. So now I'm going to read it again.
Oh, yeah.
When I was growing up, all my friends wanted to have sex with anything that moved. Why limit yourself, I told them. Yeah.
That's a great joke.
There you go. Yeah, good joke. Good job. Okay. Okay, question 2. We're going to play for this one. We're going to play for the original documents of the Warren Commission. So if you get this right, I'll have them shipped to your home.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. What book did Oswald carry with him on the day of JFK's assassination? Was it A, The Communist Manifesto, B, Curious George Rides a Bike, or C, War and Peace?
Huh. I don't like any of those answers.
I know.
The Communist Manifesto is too on the nose. Like, I think we came out with this communist knowledge after the fact. I don't think it was like something that we tracked down on him. Curious George makes him feel like a lunatic kind of weirdo, and I don't know if he came across as that either. War and Peace, that's just a giant book to be carrying around. I feel bad. The shoulder cramps and everything. You're going to fire a rifle. God, so I guess I'll go with A, even though I don't feel strong
You're
about it.
right. It is 2 on the nose, and the answer was Curious George rides a bike. So he is a weirdo.
He's a weirdo.
He checked out the children's book from the Dallas Public Library shortly before the assassination. Some believe it was for his children, while others speculate he identified with the mischievous monkey always getting into trouble.
Stop it. And he also owned 2 yellow hats.
Yeah,
I mean, like, I don't know if I don't think he also could have been like scouting something from the library, and the library's like, "Can I help you?" He's like, "Yes, I want to grab," and just grabbed a book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he just wanted his name at another location,
Yeah,
like he did with the movie theater, right? He like went and bought a movie theater ticket and then left or something.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I won't be sending you the original documents from the Warren Commission. Those will stay in I don't know, Library of Congress, wherever those are. Question 3. For this question, we're going to play for the internet
Oliver
says
Stone's
it's true
basement
sticker. Yeah, Oliver Stone. Does he have some of the files? Is that a thing?
He must. He did so much. I mean, they went to the guy who ended up confessing to something later on. Like he and Costner went to the guy's like front door and like knocked on his door or whatever, and like tried to bully answers out of a guy. Yeah, it's really
crazy.
Weird.
Yeah.
Is Deep Throat from that?
Oh,
is that a different thing?
I don't know. I know that. Wait, which was Deep Throat? Was that?
Sorry, I know I'm way off topic here.
No, it's the Warren Commission led to. What did it lead to? It led to another. The thing that uncovered all the CIA corruption and the weird programs that were going like MK Ultra and all that.
Yeah.
So
that's not that.
Yeah, and we had a story about the CIA created a heart attack gun at one point, which was like a gun that shot a thing into someone that there'd be no evidence other that they would have a heart attack, and there'd be no evidence that there was any sort of external thing. And whatever that commission was, I can't remember what the hearings were called. The people that are listening to the podcast are screaming it. So just let us know, tell us. So for question 3, we're going to play for a sticker, 3 inches square sticky. What strange item was found in Oswald's personal belongings after his arrest? So on his person, after his arrest, he had one of these things. A fake ID for an imaginary man named Alec J. Hidell. B, a pocket-sized pet rock named Carl. Or C, a signed 8x10 glossy photo of Fidel Castro.
One more time.
Sure. Yeah, no worries. A was a fake ID for an imaginary man named Alec J. Hidell. B was a pocket-sized pet rock named Carl. Or C was a signed 8x10 of Fidel Castro.
Okay. Well, Castro feels too on the nose. But I was, and the rock thing just puts us like in the Curious George weirdo thing that I just never really looked into. The first one was a fake license. I mean, he was certainly there to do something terrible and was selling it for an alibi. I'll go with the fake ID.
The answer, fake ID. You are correct. Oswald used this alias, Alec J. Hidell, to order the Mannlicher Carcano rifle that was allegedly used in the assassination. He misspelled Alec on official documents, and he left the fake ID in his wallet when he was arrested. So, if you're gonna have an alter ego, a fake ID, maybe learn how to spell what's on the ID when you're filling out stuff. Just a little
rookie mistake.
A rookie mistake. What I was trying to think of...
It's as if he didn't think things through.
Yeah, almost like that. Or, yeah, there's so much weird stuff. The committee that I was talking about in the last question was the Church Committee, named after Senator Frank Church. So the Church Committee uncovered a bunch of crazy stuff. And this happened in 1975. So it wasn't after the Warren Commission. It was after Watergate. Watergate led to the Church Committee, which led to... all kinds of craziness. So sorry.
Yeah, I can't find the article where Costner went up to someone's doorstep to be like, "Tell me who killed JFK." But it was somebody interviewed a while ago that I read an article where a guy was like dying, and they're like, "Will he give any JFK deathbed secrets before he goes, or whatever?" And he told a story where he hated Kevin Costner, and blew him off, and kicked him out of his house.
In what world does the director bring the lead actor to go and do research like that? That's so bizarre. Like, Like, I can get Oliver Stone showing up at someone's door because you're like, he's like obviously was fascinated to the point of obsession with this story. But to be like, I think he'll talk to me if I bring a movie star. Is that what he was thinking? Maybe I really don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either.
Well, so you'll get a sticker next time I see you. That'll
yes.
You've won one. Question 4. You're currently 1 for 3. Is that no?
Okay.
2? Is that right? No, you got the
I
first
one
one.
for 2.
No, you got Nick Beef. So you're 1
for
3.
Yeah.
You're 2 for 3.
Okay.
You're 2 for 3. Question 4. We're gonna play for a mention on Ice Cream Social, your podcast.
Okay.
And
That's
by
right.
the way, go listen to Ice Cream Social. If you haven't already, subscribe, become a member of that entire crazy community.
We're currently trying to win Best Podcast in Vegas and Best Patio because we found out that was a category. And so we're encouraging our listeners to both put us in for Best Podcast and Best Patio.
I would love it if you win patio but not podcast. That would be the funniest thing in the world.
That is the funniest
patio in general, whether you win the podcast category or not, patio is funny. But if you only won the patio, it would be
and patio is
so
funny to
funny.
put up in our studio too.
It is funny. Yeah,
really confuse people.
Oh man. Well, good luck to you on both of those.
Thank you.
What did Oswald's wife Marina reportedly say about his marksmanship? A, he couldn't hit the side of a barn. B, he was a sharpshooter like James Bond. Or C, he practiced by shooting cockroaches in our apartment.
3 is frightening. 3 is like, honey, I'm trying to listen to the radio. Let's see. I'm gonna go. I think that's so weird. C, that I'm gonna go with C. That's such a weird one that I think I have to go.
I would love it to be C, but it's A. She said he couldn't hit the side of a barn. Yeah, he was a former Marine, and when he first took his shooting test, he achieved sharpshooter, which is like a higher status, but on the low end of that. And then his next test, he scored lower, which was marksman. And other people have said he was not a good shot at all. In fact, when he was a Marine, he shot himself in the elbow and got into a fight with his sergeant about it. So, and it was court-martialed for the fight. So, he was, it's all over the place.
No, he took Duolingo for sharpshooting, and that's what people don't realize is that he put in the time in the car.
Yeah,
listening to different tapes as he trained himself to be a better shooter.
I guess so. I don't know if there is a correspondence course in sharpshooting and marksmanship, but I've seen. Like I said, I'm reading this long book, so obviously I'm interested in this in the history of this famous day, and I've seen all the things where they've tried to recreate those shoots from that angle, and some people can do it and some people can't. And the people that do it say you'd have to be really good. And his rifle was sort of a crappy mail order rifle. So I find it so interesting.
I do. It seems like you're at least reading a book that's skeptical of his abilities to pull this off solo.
Yeah. And there is apparently the new evidence that's coming out does point toward a second shooter, they're saying, but I don't know. I was just there.
They always say that it's going to come out, and then somehow it never even comes out.
I know, and I don't know what's the holdup right now because it has been approved to be released, and I think they're like preparing it or something. I have no idea. I was just there in Dealey Plaza. I was doing a show in Dallas not too long ago, so I stopped by, and I wanted to see what it looked like from that fence, the grassy knoll area where the fence is. And what I found, which was really entertaining, was all of the marker graffiti on the fence that people have visited. It was super entertaining to read some of the stuff that people had written on there. And so I took a lot of pictures of the different things that people wrote. Pretty good.
Any specific? What was one thing you read?
One of them said E. Howard Hunt was here. That's a good one.
Oh, nice.
There's another one that said just the words, "Aw, he dead," with a frown face. I liked that one.
It's like either, what a weird thing to write, both sincerely and insincerely.
Yeah, like you're going to choose. You can write anything, and it's going to be there for a while. And you just, he did. And then under that, Epstein didn't kill himself, of course. That's there.
Yes.
And then there's another one that says, "Thanks, Obama," which is a good one. And then I think my favorite says,
that's really funny.
Jesus says it was more than one shooter. So that's another fun
Oh, wow.
one. Yeah.
Biblical.
Yeah. So those are the ones I took pictures of. Pretty good.
Like,
So
like we're all cool with aliens now, right? Like I feel like you can release all the files now.
yeah,
Because like
the
we've
news
now had
came and went.
multiple. Yeah, we've had multiple government press conferences where they showed videos of stuff when they went, I don't know, we don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's as good as it's going to
Full
get.
press conference.
Yeah, they know as much as we do. Even if they release everything, then we all are on the same page, which means we all know nothing. And we saw these things, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just saw a new one finally with like a high quality phone from the inside of an airplane window. Did you see that one? It was look like a burrito. Oh, it's cool. It's like a silver burrito going right by the airplane from like last week.
We still don't know about Jersey drones.
We don't know about Jersey drones. All that Trump said was that they had permission to be there, or I don't know if he or his press secretary said that, but he said he was going to tell us. Well, and if it was something interesting, he would have leaked it by now, because he can't help himself. He would have said, you know, if it's unless it makes him look bad, maybe it makes him look bad or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
In any case, this last question, Matt, is for all the marbles. If you get it right, you're welcome back on the podcast anytime. If you get it wrong, you're banned for life.
Jeez, it's high stakes.
It is very high stakes as this
I really
podcast.
like your show.
Thank you. It's a
I'm a regular listener of your show.
Are you really? Well,
I am.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I've got plans to keep it going for a while, and because I've got a lot more topics on my list to get to, and I keep adding more to it. What I don't have is the time to do. So
right.
For the last 2 weeks, I've had to do rerun episodes. Here's your question. If you were to buy the plot next to a famous grave, right, and you could write anything you want on that plot, what is it that you, Matt Donnelly, would write?
Impersonator. So you read I would, whoever's on the grave next to me, I would put their name and impersonator on my gravestone.
Oh, so it's like an exact replica of their gravestone.
Yeah.
But yours would just have the name impersonator on it.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
that is so funny.
It said Craig Davis, and it'd be Craig Davis impersonator right next to it.
Can you imagine that? And then the stories, there'd be podcasts like mine speculating about, did he just love the person he emulated him through his whole life, that he bought a grave? Elvis Presley impersonator. There'd be like 50 graves. Young Elvis impersonator, old Elvis, fat Elvis impersonator. Oh, I love it. I love it. The trivia around the Elvis grave at Graceland is that his name is apparently misspelled on it. His middle name.
Oh, Aaron?
Yeah. Apparently it was only spelled with one A, but the grave spells it with two, or maybe it's the other way around. Something
right,
like
one
that.
or the other. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if
Well,
they never fixed that.
we never, and then we have E with a woman version of it. We just never got Aaron. We never got our stuff together with Aaron. We just should have figured it out early.
Aaron's a confused. Also, listen, Sarah, can you get to decide? Please get together and decide whether there's an H or not. We don't need, and Rachel's. I have to figure this out too. And
for your name, and everyone spells it the same, but I hesitate every time before I get to the E and the A.
That's the thing. It's the weirdest one, because no one spelled. Well, there are people with it spelled the wrong way, but it's probably like 2% of all Michaels, if that.
Right. It's primarily spelled AL.
It's the A thing. It's like when you're spelling words and you have to do the I before E heuristic in your head before you write it down. That's a weird thing, and people misspell it all the time. So it's led me to, when I give my name over the phone, to spell my name, and I'm a real jerk about it too. I'm like real passive aggressive. I say it's Michael, Michael. I put a little oomph on the AE. But
and atheist always throws me too. Is it atheist?
Atheist, like I'm the most atheist. Or
yes,
yeah, exactly. I'm the same way with that one. That one's
or I'm
tough.
atheist. You know,
atheist.
It sounds like we all say it atheist, but I think it's the other way. I think it's the est.
Yeah, I have to think theist. Yeah, I think theist and then atheist. That's the only way I can spell that one right. So yeah, man. The one that I haven't figured out is when people call me Mike. I don't go by Mike, but when people call me Mike, how to correct them without sounding like a dick. I haven't figured that out yet. And especially when it's now I have seen people do it. Like I saw Matthew McConaughey do it in an interview once when someone called him Matt. He said, Matthew, please. And it was very kind, and the way he said it didn't seem angry at all, and it was nice.
Right.
So I'm like, maybe I can do that in person, but in an email, I have no idea how to, my name on my signature is already in bold. I can't make it, like a 16-point font at the bottom. So,
please, my father's name was Mike. Call me Michael.
Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. I could say, to prevent confusion with my family member. Well, I don't know why we would be sharing an email, but
I didn't go to 8 years of Archangel's school to be called Mike.
Yeah. I could play the extremely religious. I think Mike. Someone told me once all the AELs at the end of biblical names are old reference to of God and whatever it was in Hebrew or Aramaic or whatever, of God. So Michael was like God, walks with God, things like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one Michael was, but I'm not religious. I'm an atheist, so it doesn't really matter. Anywho, dude, it's been awesome talking to you.
Likewise, pal.
I can't wait for you to come on the show again. You're
likewise.
absolutely welcome. You won a sticker today and a couple jokes. So, big.
Please, do you ever come through Vegas? You have to come to Vegas sometimes, right?
Not very often. It's been so long since I've been in Vegas, and I don't have much reason to go there. Most of my tour these days is like colleges and corporate events, and the corporate events are the smaller part of that equation. So.
Yeah.
Next time I'm in Vegas, we'll hang out. I'll let you know, and hopefully
I'll probably come through Ohio before you come to Vegas. So I'll make sure to jump in Ohio.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, let's hang out.
Yeah.
Let's hang out.
All right.
Good to see you. You can go check out Matt Donnelly. Just, any social media, anywhere you're at, search for the Mind Noodler, and you'll get to see the amazing stuff that Matt does. Super funny guy. It's a pleasure having you on again, man.
Thanks, pal.
That's all for this week. Thank you so much to Matt Donnelly for being my guest, and thanks to you for listening. Here's the voice of a young man named Nick Beef.
Thank you for listening to The Internet Says It's True. To listen to episodes ad-free and a week early, support us on Patreon. You can do that at patreon.com/Michael Kent. If you learned something just now that you didn't already know, go to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review with 5 stars and a few words. That helps us a ton, because that's how the algorithm works. I don't know what an algorithm is, but just do it. See you next week for a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True!
The Internet Says It's True would like to thank the Patreon subscribers whose monthly contributions help to make this show possible. Sean Brown, Joshua Endress, Dallas Ray, Bryce Swanson, Eugene Anderson, Jim and Joanne Martin, Mitch and Andrew Joseph Kemplin, and the show's official Emperor, Kick Track. The show is written and produced by me, Michael Kent. The theme song is by Finite Music Forge, and all audio clips in this episode are used for education and commentary and used under Fair Use Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107. You can listen to past episodes by searching for The Internet Says It's True wherever you get your podcasts, and you can see bonus content at patreon.com/Michael Kent.